What's up, everybody? It's James from threePedalSpecial. So if you grew up in the 90s, you probably remember a store called FuncoLand.
This is how most stores feel about letting you try their video games. This is how we feel. FuncoLand, more video games than anybody else at half the price.
I think what most people assume is that GameStop consumed them and used their inventory, which is kind of half true. You're probably wondering what the heck happened to it. Its history is actually a little more interesting than you might expect. In 1988, Funco was founded after two failed business ventures of the current owner. In its first year of business, Funco Incorporated grossed about $24K in revenue. It was originally just a flipping store. Somebody would go buy games, they'd bring it in, and they'd sell for a higher price than they purchased for it. When he started to realize that kids' attention spans were quite small and they ran out of interest in games fast, Funco then decided to do a mail-order business and put out their first ad for mail order in 1989. It became more of a will call operation for a while, and in 1990 there was a warehouse-based approach. Games were stored in a warehouse, people would order games through mail or at will call, and then they'd receive them from the warehouse. Without any advertising in the first 6 months of 1990, the business had about $15,000 in gross revenue. And by the end of the year, they were up over $200K. So by 1990, there was a lot of expansion that was needed for this store to become viable. So it continued to operate as its normal leasing and mail order service. After about a year of this operation, Funco decided maybe we should have some retail stores. And sure enough, 10 stores opened up around the Minneapolis area, right around in 1992. At the same time, in July of 1992, the stock also popped up on the NASDAQ. The initial public stock was offered in July of 1992. This was at $5 per share. Soon enough, FuncoLand started to expand to the Chicago and Dallas areas. Chicagoland's where I grew up. That's how I know about this store. By 1993, there were about 50 retail stores of FuncoLand, and it had climbed to about $18 a share. So there was a little bit of a video game crisis before this time, and now in 1992, software sales had climbed close to 80%, whereas hardware sales about 20% climbed. So video games were a pretty hot commodity in the early 90s. They were what everybody wanted. So towards 1994, FuncoLand started selling games for about half their retail price. They did this by purchasing used games from other people who would bring them in and they would buy them. This was sort of a new concept as far as retail stores went. Trading hadn't been thought of at this time. By this time, FuncoLand was buying about 3,000 games a day and offering cash or in-store credit with that. And this was interesting because at that time in 1994, the top 10 best-selling games were 5 years old. And this makes sense considering the cadence at which these consoles were released. 1994 was so great for Funco that they in fact secured the number 11 spot on Fortune magazine's fastest growing companies. After their successful year in 94, Funco started to get more competition. Big retailers started to slash prices that Funco was offering. And unfortunately, it slashed its stock by about 50%, and it was at its original IPO. There was also a delay in next generation games at this time, so it made FuncoLand have less appeal to it. Game developers would dump off in mass quantities old games to be sold to retailers. So this was really cutting into Funco's profit. So at the end of fiscal year 95, FuncoLand made about $80.4 million in sales, and they lost about $1.3 million of that, or 22 cents per share. They continued to maintain their existing stores and improve expense controls and price margining. By the end of fiscal year 96, Funco actually lost another $2 million in sales, which was even worse than the year before. So their attempts to quell things may have helped, but the market dictated otherwise. Freezes on senior staff salaries, 20% reduction in headquarters facility staff. It all was looking like the end of FuncoLand. In one last-ditch effort at the beginning of fiscal 96, Funco cut its capital expenditure bill to about $1 million. It was $8 million the year before. Funco opened 7 stores in new locations, but closed 16 by the end of 96. Sales were flat as well, there was no growth. However, as you all know, in 1996 the Nintendo 64 was released. So in fiscal 97, fall of 96, that's when Funco started to rebound themselves a bit. Net sales were close to about $121 million, up 48% from the following year, and new games were about almost 50% of sales. In 1997, Funco was purchased by, believe it or not, Barnes & Noble, and this is where the GameStop story begins. If you guys remember Babbage's, it was actually purchased by Barnes & Noble as well. Barnes & Noble was the one who created GameStop and put them on the public market. The total purchase price of Funco by Barnes & Noble was about $160 million. They also acquired Game Informer, which is why you see GameStop and Game Informer paired together. That was a FuncoLand thing. So I'm going to go quick into some of my memories about FuncoLand and specifically why I think it was a better business practice than GameStop ended up being. So I remember my experience with FuncoLand was a couple. There was mail order and also walk into the store and picking up games. I love FuncoLand for a couple of reasons. Recently I came across a training video from FuncoLand that's been put on YouTube, and they go over their games, GAMES, store protocol. Now, I actually do remember the greeting and the goodbye, so it just goes to show you how well this was driven into their employees. I was 6 years old when FuncoLand closed by me, and I still have memories of going into that store and picking up games. My parents would go there and buy me N64 games, one of which was Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. They also ordered me Multi-Racing Championship, more commonly known as MRC, on the N64 online through their mail order system. FuncoLand made things extremely easy. You were able to subscribe to get their trade-in books. Their trade-in books, which are still listed on eBay, by the way, you can still buy them. Each of the games that were out and they'd buy in on trades, they would give you the price that they would buy it for and the price they'd sell it for. While they did try and upsell you with accessories and subscriptions, they weren't overbearing about it, and they actually were genuinely wanting to help you. One of FuncoLand's cool features was that they actually allowed you to test out games before you left the store. Quite a lot like Play and Trade now. There were stories I've heard where employees would hide certain consoles as they came out, i.e. the Sega Dreamcast, N64, until people left so they could only play it and the other people wouldn't get a chance. Kind of ridiculous. There's also stories of employees who used the store's money to buy things on trades, stashed them away because they wanted the game themselves until the prices dropped, and then purchased this game from the store before it was even in the system. Kind of slimy, but I would assume that happens in most game retail stores that take in used games. So FuncoLand eventually, yes, became GameStop, but it was an entirely different company. And while some of its inventory made up GameStop's original stores and some of the locations kind of transitioned over into it, they were completely different companies. If you don't believe me, look at FuncoLand's training videos. I'll link them in the description. They're a lot different than GameStop when it comes to customer interaction. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video about FuncoLand. I certainly have fond memories of it when I was a child, and I hope you all do too. Thanks for stopping by. This is James from threePedalSpecial, out.
I see you're looking at Cruisin' USA.
Yeah.
Do you have an N64?
Yes, I do.
What kind of games do you like to play?
Oh, I like racing and sports games.
Cruisin' USA is a really hot new racing game. You might want to check out the racing game reviews in Game Informer. It's our monthly magazine. Here, take a look.
Thank you.
There are game reviews in every issue, and some pretty accurate ratings of the games, too. I'll be happy to put Cruisin' USA in a deck if you want to check it out.
Yeah, I would.
Oh, and Cruisin' USA is a 2-player game. You and your son would have a blast playing it together. We carry some great controllers, so we got you covered if you need a second one.
You know what? I don't need to play it. I'll take the game and the controller, too.
Great. I'll have you rung up and on your way.
All right.
Hi, I'm James from threePedalSpecial. Thanks for watching my video. There'll be more videos like this in the future, so if you could, please like, comment, and subscribe. I'd love to hear from the community. Who knows? You might like what I have to offer. Thanks.